Yeah, Dr. Somnath, I'm glad to welcome you here. And thank you for accepting this invitation to deliver a lecture in our STC on cultural studies. And this is Dr. Somenath Bhattacharjee, and I hope you are introduced to him. The editor-in-chief of two journals. One is Gnosis and the other is DAATH VOYAGE. So currently we are organizing this program under the auspices of DAATH VOYAGE, of which he is an editor-in-chief. And these two journals are effective in the field of English literature since I think 7 to 8 years. So he has an outstanding track record of maintaining these two journals and publishing high quality research articles in the field of literature and language. Hello.
Yes, I'm overwhelmed by your kind words. I am overwhelmed by your kind words, Dr. Hariom and Dr. Somenath Bhattacharjee. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and accepting to be a part of this erudite lecture series. And we are really humbled and honored to have you today with us. And it is my honor to introduce you to our August gathering here. Dr. Somenath Bhattacharjee is working as assistant professor in the anthropology department of Assam University Dipu campus. Assam University has two campuses. One is Dipu campus and the other is Silchar campus. It's a central university. His specialization is in social cultural anthropology, and his research works are mainly on tribal ethnography, indigenous material culture, tribal health. Till date, more than 70 research papers and 4 books as authored by him have been published in different national and international journals and editorial volumes. He has academically participated in more than 60 national and international seminars and conferences, and happens to be the life member of some of the very prestigious and national and international academic bodies such as Indian Science Congress, Indian Anthropological Society, Ethnographic and Folk Culture Society of India, Indian Association of Social Science and Health, International Union of Anthropological and Ethnological Society, which happens to be the oldest and biggest academic platform of anthropology across the world. So Dr. Somnath, on behalf of Team DAATH VOYAGE, we are extremely happy and humbled to have you today. The platform is all yours, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, and at the onset, my sincere acknowledge to Dr. Hariom Singh and Dr. Somenath Banerjee on behalf of the DAATH Voice to giving me an opportunity to share my views related to the culture and anthropological overview. Because as I am a cultural anthropologist by my education and by my academics, so once I got the information from Dr. Hariom Singh about this seminar, about this program you're organizing, so I readily accepted the invitation that definitely it's a platform where I can share some of my ideas, what I have learned about the culture and what I have understood about the culture. Now, throughout the entire lecture, what I will try to illuminate the theoretical dimensions of the culture from its very beginning to the contemporary period of COVID-19 as well. Now, at first, just I'm starting my lecture with a concept which is coming now under the period of pandemic COVID-19, that is the new normal. And it has become a part of our culture rather. That say we are using the mask, we are using the sanitizers. It has become our habit and the practice. Now, even before the COVID culture came in India, we were not familiarizing with it. We are not familiarized with it. But now we are well familiarized with it. So it has become our habit, a method of our adaptation to cope up with the pandemic situation. In the same way, why we are doing it? To combat with the pandemic, to win over the pandemic, to protect ourselves. In the same way, this concept of a pandemic was nothing new to us. If we go through the anthropological backgrounds of human evolution, the concept of pandemic even were in the period of the Neanderthals also, of our human ancestors. When there were the concept of different zoonotic diseases, means when there were the different man-animal association. So how human ancestors overcame them? With their practice, with their habits, and with their adaptations. So culture at the onset, here I would like to introduce the first thing about the culture. It is our practice, it is our habit, it is a method of our adaptation with the contemporary situation as it was prevailed, as it is now, and as it will be in future. The first definition of culture goes to the definition of E.B. Tyler, who wrote the book Primitive Culture, as culture is that complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, law, moral, customs, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society. Any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of societies. And further, N.K. Bose, the famous cultural anthropologist of India, he had given the definition as culture is a crystallized phase of man's life activities. So what does it collectively mean? Culture is nothing but it is the amalgamation of our belief, practices, customs, and whatever we do in the context of our daily livelihood. If we sum up them, if we accumulate them, if we summarize them, whatever is left or whatever is collectively comes to us, that is the culture as a whole. Culture means what we are, and civilization means what we have. Culture means what we are, what we are doing, and civilization means what we have, what we are possessing. If we look into the characters, the fundamental characters of culture from anthropological perspective, it is learned and historically determined. Culture is never being biologically inherited. It is learned and historically determined. It is shared and behaviorally determined. Culture is integrated. Culture is dynamic and changing, and culture is generally adaptive. Why it is dynamic and changing? Because 100 years before, whatever we had, nowadays it is not. That's why it is dynamic. And why it is adaptive? Because it has given us the capability, it has given us the scope to adjust with different adverse circumstances for the sustenance of our own human species, its behavior, and its survival as a whole. Now, if we think about the theories related to culture or how cultural flows went on, there are the evolution of culture, diffusion of culture, the psychological thought, what we mean the socialization process, the civilization school of thought, the postmodernism, and the globalization. And in this lecture, I will be discussing one after another these phenomena sequentially. Now, if we go to the basic concepts related to culture, before we go to the theoretical perspectives, the first thing that comes is the cultural trait, which is the smallest indivisible unit of a culture. Beyond that, nothing is there. The second is the trait complex, when a number of traits form together to make a trait complex. Say, for example, writing is a part of our culture. Writing is a part of our culture. Now, for the writing at the minimum level, we need a paper and a pen. Both the paper and the pen individually is a cultural trait, and collectively, these two traits make the trait complex. Next, there is a cultural pattern when trait and complex become related to each other in a functional role, means the importance of a particular cultural trait in that culture. The importance of a particular cultural trait in that culture. Say, for example, vermilion, the sindoor, is a part of the Hindu culture. It is a cultural trait. It is a cultural trait and cultural element. Now, what is its importance in Hindu culture? What is its importance in the Hindu rituals? That is the cultural pattern. The importance or significance of a specific cultural trait. Generally, we divide the culture into two aspects. One is the material culture, another is the non-material culture. The material culture is the sense organic, and non-material culture is beyond that. Sense organic means what we can see, what we can use, what we can touch, what we can feel. Whatever the objects we are using, our dress, our food, our shelter, these are all the part of our material culture. Our jewelries, our ornaments, everything comes under the material culture. The non-material culture is, on the other hand, very interesting. Our belief, our morals, our customs, that's what we cannot see, but it is an intrinsic part of our culture. That is the core part of our culture, the non-material one. Next, there comes the explicit and implicit. Explicit means the extrinsic, and implicit means the intrinsic aspect of the culture. Explicit means outward, what we can see about a culture. Outward, what we can see about the culture. Say, for example, a cultural trait, that is the vermilion or the sindoor. That is an explicit cultural trait. But what is the value system behind the use of the sindoor of a Hindu married woman or in a Hindu ritual? That is the implicit or the intrinsic part. Next, there comes the emic approach and the ethic approach. Anthropology is a subject, particularly social anthropology, which is totally a field-based subject. Fieldwork is the soul or the essence of any social anthropological study. Here we are used to go through these two approaches, emic and ethic, which came from the term given by Kenneth Pike, phonetic and phonemic. Emic is the inward view of a culture, whereas ethic is the outward view of a culture. Means that when we are thinking that what is emic means when a person is studying his own community and own culture. When a person is studying his own community and own culture, that comes under the emic. And when a person studies the different community or culture, that comes under the ethic. The next is the enculturation and socialization.
Dr. Somnath, sorry to interrupt you. Can you kindly keep the microphone? Fine. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay. Thank you. Next, there comes the enculturation and the socialization process. Next, there comes the enculturation and socialization process. What is that? That is the process of transmission. A child, when a newborn in a family, he don't know what is his culture, what is his practices, what he should do, what he should not. He learns it informally, at first from the family, then through the society. This entire process of learning the culture, this entire process of getting adapted with the own culture and cultural practices is being termed as the process of enculturation and socialization. Next, there comes the concept of ethnocentrism. That is the concept of cultural superiority, thinking that my own particular cultural practice is superior and the other cultural practice are subordinate or inferior, or what we commonly say as the term uncivilized or uncultured. That in anthropological study is a biased term, and we strictly avoid this methodological practice of ethnocentric approach. Rather, what we do in anthropological study, we follow the next part, that is the cultural relativism or the cultural relativistic approach, which is study the culture of the other people from their perspective. What do they think about their particular cultural aspect, their particular cultural practices? And that here is the non-biased thing. here a social anthropologist, whenever he is going to explore a field research, even within his own community, has to accept the fact that he is not known or not familiar with his own cultural practices. Rather, he should study the cultural practices of the people from their eyes, from their point of view, what they are understanding about their culture, what the practices they are talking about, that he has to note down, that he has to write, that he has to reflect through his anthropological study, which is a cultural relativistic approach, which is always non-biased, means he is not interpreting, the researcher is not interpreting from his own, but he is reflecting the people's perspective or the people's view here. Next is the cultural plurality and multiculturalism. That's what our Indian society is. The amalgamation of different cultural practices at the national, regional, sub-regional, local, and even up to the sub-local level. Different cultural practices, their peaceful cohabitation side by side is known as the cultural plurality and multiculturalism. Now, if we think about the evolution of culture, it is related with the time period. In one hand, there is the biological evolution. Another hand, there is the cultural evolution, which is determined by the environment and nature. Because if this time period of biological evolution and cultural evolution together is concerned, then it is a very long history. It's a more than a history of 10 lakh years. Since from non-human primate, we became today the Homo sapiens sapiens. It's a very long history. The first hominid group, that is Australopithecine, came around 1,50,000 years ago when the lower Paleolithic period came. That was 1,50,000 years ago. And now we are at this stage. So this entire process is known as the biocultural evolution, where we had to adapt from the different stages of environmental changes also. The glaciation period, the pluviation period. When it was the Neanderthal, it was a glaciation period. Then it was changed and became the sapiens sapiens. So I'm not going into that biological details, as that's absolutely a different topic. But I will go here. I will go to the process of the cultural evolution part. And what is cultural evolution? It is a process where the evolution took place of different socio-cultural institutions and culture of mankind as a whole. It got developed and accumulated to constitute the growth of culture over different period of time, but in a continuity. That cultural evolution went through stages after stages of development in a continuous process. And what it gave, the main motto was from simple to complex, from homogeneity to heterogeneity, and from the state of uncertainty to certainty. Uncertainty means the stage of the hunting-gathering stage, the nomadism. Certainty means the stage of the settled agriculturist and the stage of the permanent settlement. The cultural evolution is broadly divided into two aspects. One is the classical, another is the neoclassical evolution. The classical evolution was associated with the unilinear and universal theories. That is with the theory of Tyler and Morgan, and then the universal theory of Child and White, and multilinear theory was proposed by Stewart and Shalin. Briefly, I am going through one after another of these things. The first thing of the unilinear evolution, what we mean is, uni means one, linear means line. The one line evolution means evolutionary sequence followed through a single particular line. The definition or the main theoretical assumption is that different successive stages of development occurred in a continuous process. The time was different, the space was different, but the method or process is same. Be it the phenomenon of Europe or the phenomenon of Asia or the phenomenon of Africa, the cultural evolution may have taken place at different period of time in different geographical spaces, but the method or process is same. In this context, E.B. Tyler gave the concept of technonymy, means where we are using the name of the child to reckon the parents. In North Indian society, it is very common. Say, for example, we used to say Ramu ke amma and Ramu ke bapu. Now, who is Ramu? Ramu is a child. Definitely Ramu ke Amma has her own name and Ramu ke Bapu has his own name. But we don't reckon the parents with their own name. We are reckoning them with the name of their child. This method is called as technonymy. I am giving you the example of the North Indian caste societies, but this practice is well prevalent among different Aboriginal, indigenous, and autochthonous groups across the world. There came the question of the Tyler. How it is possible? Why it came up? Then he assumed that definitely their cultural evolution had a common pattern or common phenomenon from where it had originated or it had started. That's why a trait is still there, which can be linked throughout them. And there he gave the definition of culture from where we have started as a complex whole, which include the knowledge, belief, art, law, moral, customs, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society. Now, Tyler has studied the evolution of religion as a part of culture through this unilinear process. He gave 3 terms: animism, polytheism, and monotheism. According to Tyler, the cultural evolution has taken place through 3 stages: animism, to polytheism, to monotheism. Animism is the worship of the soul or the belief of the soul, which had came from the Latin word anima, which means the soul. And there are 2 types of soul: the body soul and the ghost soul. The body soul is the fixed soul. If it is left, then the person is dead. And the ghost soul is the free soul, which comes to the dream, which moves around the earth. We often dream different dead persons. Why? Because it is the free soul or the ghost soul of them, which comes to us. Their remembrance to us. That is the concept of the free soul and the ghost soul. Next, there is the concept of polytheism, which is very important related to the consequence of human evolution. Because whenever there was a hunting-gathering stage, even we can notice the practice of religion among the Neanderthals. There are ample evidences where Neanderthals practiced the burial rituals. What for the sake? A method to worship the nature, because they are in the lap of nature. They were they had nothing to protect from their own against the nature, against different natural forces. So what was the best thing? To appease them, to appease those forces. And when settled agricultural came or primitive agriculture came, lot of factors were dependent upon that: the fertility of the soil, the rain, the monsoon, the climate, the sunlight, etc., etc. Now, if we worship those forces, then it will be in favor to us. And separate spirits came in this regard. One spirit for rain, one spirit for fertility, one spirit for sun, one spirit for soil. That gave the concept of polytheism. And in later form, it came to monotheism: one supreme God. One supreme God. Be it in the Christianity, the Lord Jesus; be it in the Islam, the Hazrat Muhammad, so on and so forth. Now, the next study was done in the context of the unilinear evolution was L.H. Morgan in a study of League of Iroquois, where he found similar kinship behavior between 2 geographically much isolated tribal group, the Iroquois Indian and the Ojibwa Indians. He found that they have a lot of similar behavior related to their kinship practices. How it is possible? Morgan concluded that they must have a common ancestry or a common practice related to their cultural evolution, or they have a common root of cultural origin. The most significant thing what Morgan has stated in his book Ancient Society is the concept of savagery, barbarism, and civilization through the process of unilinear cultural evolution. And in each of the stages, along with different ethnic periods, there occurred the technological development, and with that technological development, the practices related to human life got changed, the practices related to human economy got changed, and they got settled from nomadism towards the permanent settlement. He divided the ethnic period into lower, middle, and upper savagery, then lower, middle, and upper barbarism and civilization. How the livelihood changes? Nomadic from fruit and nut. The first concept of speech came up. I mean, here the use of different words, unconstructed, unvocal in the sense, ungrammatical, I will rather say. Then there the concept of the fish and the fire. when fire came up during the period of Homo erectus. We have to keep it in mind over here. At that time, by sitting around the fire, nowadays during the winter season, what we practice, sit around the fire, that practice was even present during the period of Homo erectus, sitting around the fire. That gave the earliest concept of human assemblage and human planning. Along with that, the concept of roasted food came up with the use of the fire. Accordingly, the change of dentition came up in human ancestors. The concept of roasted food, food is an integrated part of our culture. Food is an integrated part of our culture. So that first evidence was shown during the period of Homo erectus. Then the concept of bow and arrow and big game hunting. When big game hunting came up, like the woolly mammoth, reindeers, etc., definitely it was not a matter that one single individual can do. It's a group work, it's a band work, it's a team work. That means planning has came up. Next, there came the pottery and the storage. When the primitive agriculture came up, the concept of surplus economy came up, the concept of primitive storage, its preservation came up. Gradually came with the domestication and the use of iron tool and smelting, and lastly, demarcated with the civilization, the phonetic alphabet and writing, because we must know that Indus Valley civilization is a civilization where there were no use of iron. So why is the civilization? Accordingly, it was demarcated that civilization came when the concept of phonetic alphabet and earliest script may not be deciphered. We are yet to decipher the Indus Valley script. That's why it is coming under the period of proto-history, not the prehistory or not the history. So that demarcated the concept of civilization. Here, the most important thing is that along with the ethnic period, the technological changes were occurred, and that technological changes changed over the economic organization of the human being from the subsistence to the surplus pattern. And along with that, the concept of primitive settlement came. That primitive settlement gave the concept of neighborhood. That neighborhood gradually formed the concept of family, marriage, and kinship. Now, the next part is the universal evolution. What it has stated that evolution of culture and culture of mankind as a whole, same time, same process throughout the entire world. In unilinear, it was told that the process is same, but the place is different, but the time is different. Universal is stating that no, it is not like that. Process is same throughout the entire world at a single particular point of time, which was analyzed by Gordon Childe in his two famous books, The Man Makes Himself and Social Evolution. And here he coined the term Neolithic Revolution, because whatever the remarkable changes of human ancestry came up, it was during the Neolithic period, which gave the concept of primitive agriculture, which gave the concept of surplus economy, which gave the concept of the primitive settlement, which gave the concept of domestication, which gave the concept of neighborhood, and earliest formation of the families. All together at a particular period of time, such remarkable changes came up, which made Gordon Childe to state that Neolithic period is not the period of evolution alone, it is a period of revolution, where within a short period of time, remarkable changes took place throughout. There are three major phases according to Gordon Childe, which demarcated the process of cultural evolution: the invention of food production, urbanization, and industrialization. With the archaeological period, Paleolithic, Neolithic, then the two metallic age, copper and bronze, and the process is savagery, barbarism, higher barbarism, and civilization at last. When civilization came, it is the concept of urbanization. It is the concept of urbanization. And industrialization, definitely the contemporary period, which we will say rather. The next theory was proposed by Leslie White in his book, Science of Culture and Evolution of Culture. This is one of the very scientific theory related to the cultural evolution, where he has stated an equation: energy into technology means the culture, where he has stated that energy revolution with the advancement of technology is the prime factor related to cultural evolution. As the technology is advanced, the better level of energy we can harness means better level of production we can do. With that better level of production, our cultural advancement can be there. And he has stated the terms techno-economic, social, and ideological. Techno-economic means what is the technology. Social means where it is available. Ideological means who can use it. Say, for example, the plow. Our settled agricultural pattern. Plow, concept of plow. Among the agricultural community of India, techno-economic, the plow. Social means where it is available among the agricultural communities of India. Ideological means who can use it. Can we have ever seen that a female is tilling the soil? No, we have not ever seen. It is not the practice because female being a mother, tabooed that they cannot till the mother earth. That is the ideological. That is the ideological, the cultural concept, the social belief, the social faith. And he has stated that more advanced the technology, there is the more higher level of energy production and higher level of civilization. Depending upon that energy and technology with the advancement of culture, he has stated that as much as the nutrition is secured, as much as the production is secured, as much as the reproduction is secured, the society will be progressive, society will be continuous. If food production is secured, then the nutrition is secured. If the nutrition is secured, then the sustenance of the next generation is secured. That is the process of reproduction. If the process of reproduction is secured, society will continue, society will go through. If societies go through, automatically culture will go through. Society is made up of man, and man is a social and a cultural animal who has a cultural behavior. Now the theory of multilinear evolution, by name it is significant that multi-line means many line. They had directly obscured the theories of unilinear and universal, that it is never be in a single place in a single time. It is in different time, in different place, it is in different way. That's why it is multi-line as proposed by Gillian Stewart in his theory of culture change. What he gave a concept of culture ecology. He gave the concept of culture ecology, where he stated that culture is determined by man and environment. Culture is related with man and his environmental practices. Different climate is associated with different resources. We can't expect that the natural resource of Rajasthan, the desert from Rajasthan, and the natural resource of Ladakh region and the natural resource of riverine Bengal and riverine Assam is similar to one another. Accordingly, with the variation of the resource, the material culture will vary. Accordingly, the process of cultural evolution will vary and the human practices will vary. And exploitation of a particular area by means of a particular technology. A particular technology is not applicable in a different geographical area. It is applicable in a particular geographical area only. And accordingly, it will give the production. Accordingly, its evolutionary pathway will get framed. Then in this multilinear evolution, there came the concept of Marshall Shalin, the biocultural evolution, where he stated the term general evolution and the specific evolution. General evolution means as a whole, what is the evolutionary pathway? Specific evolution means in a particular aspect. Say, for example, economic organization. Say, for example, social institution. Say, for example, human skull. Say, for example, human femur bone or human spinal cord. Each and every such aspect is a specific evolution. As a whole, it is a general evolution. Next, there comes the concept of cultural diffusion. Cultural diffusion is a process by which a particular cultural trait moves to some other place directly or indirectly through migration. A particular cultural trait, as the diagram is showing, a particular cultural trait, the trait A, is moving from one place to another place, from place A to place B to place C, either directly or through indirectly. Say, for example, in India, silk, paper, and tea came directly from China. To the Western world, it went through India. So from China to Western world, it is an indirect process through India. From China to India, it's a direct process. And this is a cultural diffusion. Now, there is a distinctive difference between the cultural diffusion and the process of acculturation. Cultural diffusion is a one-way process, whereas the acculturation is a both-way process. Cultural diffusion can take place in distant societies, but acculturation should take place in closely located societies. Say, for example, when Islamic rule came to India, our food habit of the biryanis and others, our dress pattern like salwars and sherwanis came from them. It was never the traditional dress and the food pattern of India, but it came to us through them. And against that, they had taken the concept of Ayurveda from us. In the same way, when the colonial rule came, the English level of education, our present dress pattern, and the Western medicine, it came through the Western world only. Because these two societies, whenever it will be the Islamic rule or whenever it will be the Western, the colonial rulers, they were side by side with the traditional Indian society. They exchanged each other cultural trait for a prolonged period. That is the process of acculturation, where it's a both-way process. It's a both-way process. Diffusion has come through migration. Acculturation has come through close cohabitation, which has got assimilated and adjusted with one another. Now, there are three diffusionary schools of thought: the British, German, and American, which was proposed. The British school was proposed by J.E. Smith, William J. Perry, and W.H. Rivers. The German school by Friedrich Ratzel, Leo Frobenius, Fritz Gibner, and F.W. Smith. And the American school, the Franz Boas, Clark Whistler, and A.L. Kroeber. The British school is being termed as the Pan-Egyptian school, who has told that Egypt is the core place of development of all the cultural trait. From Egypt, it had spread to the entire world because due to the uninventiveness and imitative nature of the human being. Say, for example, in Greece also there is a concept of sun god Apollo, and we have in Hindu ritual also the concept of sun god, the Lord Surya. The British diffusionist, the Pan-Egyptian school of diffusionism, states that it is through Egypt which it has started. The Egyptians, they have their sun god. And the same trait is being followed by the Greek, by the Indians as well. That's what they have told as the Pan-Egyptian school, which was discarded by the German school. That different trait has evolved in different places, in different time or phases, and moved to different other places through migration. This German school of diffusionism is being termed as the Kulturkreis school or the culture circle school. Means each cultural trait has a particular circle or a district, and similar sort of cultural practices in a demarcated geographical area can be noticed. Say, for example, the use of the rice, or the use of the sari. It's a concept of culture circle. The use of the rice in the eastern and northeastern part of India. The use of the wheat in the western part of India as a staple food. The use of the sari. These are all the culture circle, where a particular demarcated geographical area where a particular cultural trait are getting practiced by the people, although they may have their internal cultural differences. Say, for example, the Assamese societies and the Bengali societies. In both of the cases, the staple food is rice, but their cultural practices are different. The tribal groups of Northeast India, the Naga, the Garo, the Khasia, they are different in their cultural practices, but the staple food is rice. This is the culture circle school. The next is the American school of diffusionism, who has elaborated that concept into the culture area, age area hypothesis, where they have stated a culture area as a geographical area of cultural similarities, and they have given the concept of core area from where a culture has originated, and the age area up to which a cultural trait is spreaded. The core from where a cultural trait has originated, and the spread means the area where a cultural trait is spreaded. The trait which has the largest area of trade, the trait which has the largest area of spread is known as the oldest trait, and the trait which has the smallest area of spread, it is the latest trait. I'm going back to once again the concept of rice. Rice is not merely the staple food of Eastern India alone, it is a staple food of Eastern Asia, China, Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, everywhere if you go, you will find that it is a Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, everywhere it is a staple food of rice. Why? That is the core and the spread. That is the core and the spread. That has the largest area, and that is the oldest trait, because food is the first basic thing of human life. Food is that part of culture which is a fundamental first basic thing of human life. That's why we can measure it through the American School of Diffusionism, the spread area, the age area of the rice as a cultural trait. The next thought of culture that is related to us is the culture personality school. How culture configures the personality pattern of the individual, or socialization process of the individual, how we know about our culture. It was founded by Ralph Linton, the famous American anthropologist, who has stated that culture is the configuration of learned behavior whose component elements are shared and transmitted by the members of a particular society. We come to know about our social practices and cultural practices through the process of learning and through the process of sharing, from informally through our family and through our society at first. And it develops a personality which is the organized aggregate of psychological process and status pertaining to an individual. My own development, my individual development within my cultural framework and within my cultural pattern, what I should behave, what I should not, what I should do, what I should not, what are my do's and what are my don'ts. There are a cultural prescription beyond that within my society. I am not supposedly to go often. In this regard, there is a concept of Ruth Benedict about his study on the pattern of culture. He has given the two concepts, the Apollonian and the Dionysian. His theory was basically on the two ideal personality which has configured the culture. Apollonian personality, the peace-loving sun god, and Dionysian personality, that is the cruelsome Greek god. Pueblo Juni, that's a tribal group of New Mexico. They were, according to the Apollonian concept, the peace-loving and cooperative. And Obu and Kwakiutl, they had followed the Dionysian type, the cruelsome type. They are the worshipper of them, and accordingly it has been framed up. The second book of Ruth Benedict is utterly important, that is the Chrysanthemum and the Sword, which was based on the study of the Japanese national character. At the childhood, the Japanese children were taken care of by their parents. As soon as the adolescent stage come up, they were supposed to face strict familial and social restrictions, that what they should not do. A lot of cultural barriers comes to them. That's why childhood is like a chrysanthemum flower for them. And whenever the adolescence come, these restrictions, the embargoes are just like a sword on them. Next, it is the concept of Margaret Mead about the impact of culture and personality, where he has stated about the three tribal groups studied by her. That is the Arapesh, which is in a naturally protected area with no fear of enemy attack. Male and female both are submissive in nature. The Mundugumor, who are competitive, suspicious, and male-female aggressive in behavior. And the Chambuli, where the male are submissive and the female are aggressive in character. Here, personality pattern differs. Why? Depending upon the nature, depending upon the climate. Arapesh, their location is naturally secured. Their requirements are plentiful, abundance in nature, competition is less. But in case of the other two, naturally, all the three are the nomadic tribal groups. The rest two tribal groups, the Mundugumor and Chambuli, although they are nomadic, but they have to search from place to place, roam from place to place in search of the habitation, in search of the food, in search of the fundamental requisites. That's why competition is more among them rather than the Arapesh. And Linton, in his book, The Cultural Background of Personality, has stated that the biological and psychic needs of an individual are associated with three types: the emotional response, security for long term, and novelty of experience. Emotion from the family, security from the family, which is the first place for us to learn our culture, our practices, our socialization, our affection, and last, the novelty of experience. Through our trial and error method, we are learning the day-to-day experience. Next, there comes the concept of the civilization school, which was proposed by Robert Redfield in his book Folk Culture of the Yucatan through his famous concept, the folk-urban continuum. The folk society and the urban society, culturally they may be distinct, but they are not totally isolated. A continuous cultural interaction is going on in between them throughout the time immemorial. And in this regard, he had given two concepts, the great tradition and the little tradition. Great tradition is formal, written, literate, and reflected few, and little tradition is informal, oral, illiterate, and unreflected many, the cultural practices. The great tradition, they are the written, the little tradition, they are the oral. Generally, the little tradition are found among the aboriginal, the autochthonous, the tribal groups, and the great tradition in the non-tribal groups. But we have to remember in the caste societies also, there are certain oral traditions which are not written. But if the religious practices are concerned, as the caste society are more under the Hinduized ritual, so that's why it is coming under the great tradition. In this regard, Oscar Lewis gave the concept of rural cosmopolitan. For him, in Indian society, the rural culture does not made up of man alone, but it is the relation with a human individual to his nature, to his animals, to his birds, as a complex cultural interaction, the man-animal cohabitation, the man-nature-animal cohabitation, all are an integral part of his culture. All are an integral part of his culture as a whole. The nature around, the climate around, the animals around, the cattle around, the birds around, as a whole, it frames his culture, his world view, their world view about their own village, about their own territory. Next, there comes the concept of universalization and parochialization as given by Marriott. Universalization means when the little traditional concepts globally get spreaded up. Little traditional concepts globally get spreaded up. And parochialization means when the great traditional concepts come towards the downward. When the caste traditional concept or the written traditional concept comes to the downward. And universalization means when the oral tradition goes to the global dimension. The little tradition to the global dimension is the universalization, and the great tradition to the local region or to the non-tribal or to the tribal region, that is the phenomenon of parochialization. Say for example, use of fire in the tribal marriage nowadays is a part of the parochialization. Use of fire is a typical practice of the Hindu marriage, but it is being seen in the tribal societies also right now. That is the concept of parochialization. And use of different herbal medicine, which were available in different local tribal areas. That is one of the concept of universalization. Milton Singer gave the concept of culture complex, that in a particular area, culture is not merely some practice. Culture is an amalgamation of geography, performance, the specialists, the cultural specialist who performs, and the cultural media, means who are associated with its close association, who are day to day are practicing those, day to day are associated, day to day are the followers, learning, the disciples. Maurice Opler has given the concept of unity and extension of village. According to him, culture is not merely located within a familial or the village courtyard, it is beyond that. Through the marriage system, through the common rural market, through the agricultural fair, through the cattle fair. Culture generates a civilization, and in this regard, Robert Redfield gave the concept of Redfield-Kroeber model, where he has stated that civilization is the assemblage of style followed by the inhabitants of a certain area through a certain duration of time. One crystallized, a total pattern of style gives the culture its distinctive character. Means different styles, different patterns together assemble, different styles of different patterns together assemble the civilization. Say, for example, if Indian civilization is concerned, it is not merely a local, a regional, a territorial, but it is the amalgamation of all the cultural practices associated within the Indian land and territory from different region to sub-regions as a whole. That's why it is the assemblage of style. Next, there comes the concept of the symbolism and the interpretative approach related to culture. The symbolic approach was given by Victor Turner, who has stated that culture operates the society and there are certain symbols which are the operators in the social process. There are certain symbols which are the operator in the social process. Best example is a religious symbol. Different religious symbol, it has its own meaning, it has its own cultural value, which operates the social practices or its ritualistic behavior as well as the social behavior. The interpretative approach was given by Clifford Geertz, who has stated that operation of culture occurs through the symbol which act as the vehicle of culture. It is the core value of a culture, which is a set of integrated moral values. Any religious symbol or any tribal symbol, it is associated with their aesthetic cultural value. It is associated with their aesthetic cultural value. That's what we used to say as a tangible and the intangible cultural heritage. The material cultural object of a tribal society, apparently what we can see, that is a tangible. That symbol is a tangible symbol, what we can see. But what is the intangible? The core value. Whatever the morals are associated with it, whatever the faiths, the beliefs are associated with it. Culture is expressed by external symbol that a society uses. Culture is historically transmitted pattern of meaning embodied in people. And he has given that thick description of culture. Whatever we have learned, whatever has been historically, socially has been transmitted to us throughout the generation, we behave accordingly in our cultural system grossly. Does not mean completely, because there are the patterns of changes also. Definitely, there are the pattern of changes. Culture is a dynamic process, but certain values are there, which are the core values, which remain static, which we really cannot change even if we think for. Next, there comes the idea about the globalization of culture. Generally, what by globalization, anthropologically, what we mean, it is the increasing flow of the trade, finance, culture, idea, people brought about by the sophisticated technology of communications across the world throughout the widespread of neoliberal capitalism. Common global culture, universal culture, or a common national culture. Here, Appadurai had given 5 kinds of global connectivity. Ethnoscape, the global movement of the people, the concept of global village. People can move across the world without any limitation. Technoscape, the common dependence of technology across the world. Mediascape, the role of the global media through which we can access. Ideoscape, the sharing of the ideas. And the financescape, the global dependence of the e-commerce, e-markets. The best example is the share market. If the share market is crashing in USA, it is shown the effect in India as well. Whatever the idea, now the vaccine, concept of vaccine. UK is preparing the vaccine. We are also, accordingly, we are also trying that we should also get this vaccine. We are also trying our researches parallelly. And we are thinking about the business tie-up. Just I came to the news today that Russia is going to give some 100 crore, some 10 crore of vaccine, of Sputnik vaccine to India. That is the ideoscape. That is the ideoscape, sharing of the ideas. Globalization promotes a worldview towards intercultural exchanges and promotion of multicultural society with due respect to local culture. With due respect to local culture means local cultures are here also important, but definitely due to globalization, many local cultures are under the threat, particularly many little traditions are under the threat. No doubt about that. They are getting engulfed by the global cultures. The global culture, it widens up the cultural interaction between the global to the local level, between the global with the local level. The continuous cultural flow, what was told by Redfield as the folk urban, that's what we can see as the global to local. It encouraged the cultural and social identities of the local people through global interaction. forms the hybridization of the culture. The local identity of a people, what are their cultural traits? Nowadays, the indigenous handicrafts are very famous. The concept of ecotourism and indigenous handicrafts are very famous. From where it is coming to the local level, where it is getting marketized at the global level. That is getting marketized at a global level. What we are using the term right now is a glocalization. Instead of globalization, we are using the term glocalization, means the assimilation of the local culture into the global flow. That is the glocalization. Now, there are some postmodern view related to cultural anthropology also. First, there is a concept of deconstruction by Derrida. We used to say language as the vehicle of culture. And what deconstruction says is to clarify the meaning of unclear meaning of a text. It discovers the hidden assumption about a text, because a text has not a single meaning. It has an innate meaning. There cannot be a single interpretation of a text. It implies the meaning of the meanings. Deconstructs the explicit meaning of the text, tries to find out the hidden meaning which is implicit. Whatever I am thinking about a tribal oral narrative, it may not be the thing what the concerned tribal people are thinking. That is the deconstruction. That is the cultural deconstruction. How he is looking into his worldview, how he is looking into his worldview, that is a deconstruction here, which is innate to her, which is implicit to her. What we used to do is through the relativistic approach, we want to know about the people's perspective, what they are understanding about their culture, what they are thinking about their text, what they are thinking about their literature. All knowledge are within this society, culture and language. The oral tradition, the oral knowledge itself, it is within the society, itself it is within their indigeneity and practice. But what they are viewing, what is their idea about their ethnomedicine, what is their idea about their folk performances, that is the inert meaning, that what we must not write from our own observation, but we have to write according to them. That's what is the deconstruction of culture according to anthropological perspective, because there cannot be a single correct interpretation about a text. There cannot be a single innate meaning, and there cannot be a single correct interpretation. I am viewing it from my perspective, they are viewing it from their perspective. Here, distinction between me and they is not from the side of the humanity, but the barrier here is from the side of the researcher and to the people on whom the study is being conducted. The differentiation is between the people who are from a different culture, who don't know their cultural practices being born within their own cultural system. Next, there comes the concept of the Pierre Bourdieu, how we are correlating Pierre Bourdieu in cultural anthropology. Human agents assemblage their culture through practice or praxis. It's a long process, the biocultural phenomenon. Different practices came up, or praxis came up in different period of time. By praxis, he holds the idea that society and culture are created by purposeful creative agents who bring life to their society and culture through talk and action. At every level, whatever the cultural traits we have discovered, starting from the prehistoric Paleolithic tools to the metallic tools to the contemporary period, it has an use to that society, to that culture, and gradually it came up to our conversation, gradually it came up to our interaction and action. Here, field is a open fluid model ended network of objective relation between positions. Field means the fluid. Fluid means an openness of network of social relation, which has objective relations, means purposeful relation within the society and within the neighborhood between positions. Say, for example, within our family system, I, an individual, I am related to a number of women within my family. One woman is my mother, one woman is my sister, one woman is my wife, one woman is my daughter. But as the relationship are different, definitely my cultural behavior with each of them are absolutely different. The way I behave with my wife is absolutely dissimilar the way I will behave with my mother or with my sister. The way I will behave with my sister will be totally dissimilar to my behavior with my daughter. Why? Kinship varies, relationship varies, social relation varies, cultural norms, regulation, practices varies accordingly. The similar way, I am a male, I am related to my father and my brother, relationship varies accordingly, and my son. All three are male. One is my father, my brother, and my son. The way I will behave with my son will not be the same I will behave with my father. Kinship varies, relationship varies. So field is an open fluid concept where there are the different patterns of relation, and that different pattern of relation configure our different cultural behavior, our different cultural sanction, our different cultural restriction within our familial system as well as within our societal system. In society, practice is usable language. Practice is not the abusable language, because that is culturally restricted, culturally prohibited. Doxa is a state in which all members of a community grant the naturalness of a relation within community in spite of inequalities. What it means that the cultural equilibrium within the society, the cultural equality within the society, it does not differentiate. It does not, cultural behavior, our cultural process does not differentiate within the society. It gives the concept of equality. Culturally, in the view of the culture, the individuals are equal to the society. All the individuals are equal to the society. The next part that is associated with the concept of Jean Baudrillard is in the postmodern society. That is the society, our postmodern society is the society of image, or it is a simulation society. By material culture, we mean different material objects which we use. Now, these material objects, according to Baudrillard, is run and controlled by code, sign, and image. We don't purchase the object. We purchase the brand. We purchase the code. We purchase the image. That gives a meaning or the value of the product. The cultural value of the product is being coded by its brand, by its image, by its signature, by its presentation. Product is same. It may be a soap, it may be a dress, use is same, but our preference varies according to the choice. Who gives us the choice? The choice is being given us by the image or the simulation society, the simulation process, through the coding, through the branding, through the image. That's why he has stated that postmodern society is a consumer society. Code is the master controller. Code is the master controller of our cultural behavior, the brand, the product, whatever we are using, the material object for a particular purpose, we will go to that particular brand and product, because that has consciously, unconsciously, and subconsciously has controlled our mind, has given an image to our mind, what we should use, what we should not use, what we should use, what we should not use. Often I used to say my students that if there are two side-by-side student canteens, one is made up of the pizza and burger, another is of the traditional Indian food of the rice and the rotis, all the students will go to the pizza and burger, because that simulation has been imaged upon us as a concept of fast food or working lunch. So Baudrillard has stated that we are, to satisfy our need, we are associated with different cultural products. We are using different cultural products. But how we are using? Who are forcing us to use? It is the code, it is a simulation society, and we are in a consumer society now. Our consumer behavior or our consumer culture is nothing but a culture which is based upon the image and based upon the code, who is the master controller of our consumer cultural behavior. So as an overview, throughout the entire discussion, it may be summarized that culture is a dynamic process. culture leads to civilization. Culture is associated both with the material object and the non-material object. Culture configures socialization and personality formation. The contemporary period is a period of interaction between global and local culture. The postmodern view of culture deconstructs the idea to analyze the inert meanings. Consumerism of material products are intimately related with the image or the code of the product. It attracts the consumer mind. The post-COVID period is a period of new normal social and cultural behavior as well, a process of new adaptation through the practices. Now, our territories, our areas are being termed as a containment zone. That is nothing but it is a deconstruction idea. Now our territory, it has been termed as a deconstructed into the containment zone, has restricted our movements and our new normal behavior. Also a process of adaptation, use of the mask, use of the sanitizer, what for the sake? To combat the disease. And it has become a practice now. A few months ago, 6 or 7 months ago, we are not habituated with it. But now we are more than habituated with it. And that is the cultural behavior. That is the process of new adaptation, which was done in earlier also in the process of human evolution. And we are still doing it also in the current scenario. What for the sake? Because man will sustain and simultaneously culture will also sustain. So with these words, I am completing my discussion over here, and my immense acknowledgement to the organizers for giving me the chance to share my views with you all. And thanks to all of the participants here. I can see right now 156 participants on the screen. Thanks to all for your kind and patient hearing. Thank you very, very much to all the organizers. It's a pleasure to have interaction with you. Thank you very much. Hello. Hello, Dr. Banerjee and Dr. Hariom. Dr. Banerjee and Dr. Hariom. Yeah. Dr. Banerjee and Dr. Hariom, I have finished. So if you have anything to...
I'm so sorry. We had a little technical issue. I'm so sorry.
Yes, it's a pleasure. It's a common phenomenon with the web series. It's a common phenomenon.
So what happens is, although our internet is very stable, but sometimes when there is a huge mass over it,
yes, exactly.
It somehow the Zoom somehow hangs. So I'm extremely sorry.
We have also experienced a lot in conducting the webinars, and believe me, I was never frightened before appearing any PG exam rather than giving this webinar. I prayed to God that please for 1.5 hours, let my internet be very smooth to work. I never afraid with the question paper. I never afraid with the invigilator, but I was afraid with the network. Truly speaking to you.
First of all, on behalf of Team DAATH Voyage, I would like to congratulate you, Dr. Somnath, for such a detailed, well-researched and hard-worked presentation, and trying to touch upon almost all the major concepts, and explaining so lucidly the concepts with regular day examples, and the way you explained the new form of containment zone as a deconstructive form is really appreciable, and is also testimony to the fact that how do you correlate your teaching, and how do you try to explain your day-to-day phenomena, or explain your concepts with the day-to-day phenomena. That clearly gives an understanding of the kind of the teacher that you are, of the kind of the liberal and lucid outlook towards teaching that you have. So on behalf of Team DAATH Voyage, we are extremely thankful that we were able to somehow have you today. and credit goes to you and my co-organizer, Dr. Hariom Singh, for bringing you to this platform. And I'm sure that our participants definitely benefited from such a very, very exhaustive, well-researched presentation on the key concepts of cultural studies. Now, if you may permit me, I can ask you a few questions.
Sure. Whatever has been asked, I will be eager to answer.
The first question is, does ethnocentrism give rise to culture shock or xenophobia? What are your views on it?
I'm going to that, but I can see the first question is being said by Ipsita Shet Bishas, that is there any difference between plurality and multiculturalism? Okay. Let me explain it in a very easy way. There is a little bit of difference. How? Say plurality, if Hindu culture is concerned, then Hindu culture is present in West Bengal, in UP, in southern India also, everywhere. But if the food is concerned, food is a part of the culture. Food is a part of the culture. The food of the culture of the Bengali Hindu, the food of the Hindu people of the UP, northern India, and the food of the Hindu people of the southern India are different. Dress pattern are different. That is plurality. That is plurality. Within a particular culture, within a particular system, there are some pointed difference in certain aspect, but our religion is same. Mind, our religion is same. Religious practices are same. Instead of that, food is a bit different. The Bengali Hindus, you know, we are famous for the fish-eating people. We are famous for the fish-eating people. The North Indian people, they are mostly the vegetarians. South Indian people, they are also the vegetarians. They have their food pattern in a different way, but religiously we are similar. That is the plurality. And multiculturalism means different cultural practices, different social practices, different religious practices as a whole, as an amalgamation, as a whole, as an amalgamation. That is the multiculturalism. If we think about Indian culture, it is the Hindu culture, it is the Islamic people are there, there is the tribal, innumerable tribal people there in India. There are 1,571 or even more tribal groups, and majority of them are widely culturally dissimilar from one another. Widely culturally distinct from one another. Their culture is also under the greater Indian national culture, the culture of the Indianness together. Sikhism is also there, Buddhism is also there. So that is our multiculturalism. Plurality means within a particular system, how far it is different or how far it is the point to point, there are certain distinction. Now that question, what sir you have asked, that whether ethnocentrism gives to cultural shock and xenophobia, I will say yes. Yes, this is a very vital factor, because that what is the practice of the colonial culture to us, the practice of the colonial culture to us. That native Indian, blackish Indian, definitely it gives a culture shock. Obviously, it gives a culture shock. Then the next question is, and now the question of xenophobia. Yes. Now,
if you talk about going back to your previous question, plurality and multiculturalism.
Yes.
There is an extension of the question. If there is, if you, as you answered, that of course there is.
Percy, culture in India could be an example of which one? Culture of India, I will say unity in diversity. I will say in a single answer, unity and diversity. That is the Indian national culture. We can't say exactly this is Indian culture. It's an amalgamation of everything, starting from top to the hill of the Kashmir to the bottom of Kanyakumari, starting from the core of Arunachal Pradesh to the end of the Kutch and Saurashtra. That is the Indian culture as a whole, local, regional, sub-regional, territorial, tribal, non-tribal, this religious, that religious, as a whole, Indianness, collective Indian national culture. I can't say this is only Indian culture. This particular tribal culture is only the Indian culture. No, I can't say that. I really anthropologically can't say that. But because if we think that Naga culture is outside of the Indian culture, it cannot be. Or if you can say that the culture of the Gonds or the culture of the Santals, it's outside of the Indian culture. No, that is never possible. It is not only a particular culture. It is the assimilation of each and every cultural practices which are going on in our Indian land and territory. That is the greater Indian nationalism. That is the need of the day. That is the need of the hour. As a whole, the togetherness, India is a togetherness, an amalgamation of the culture. What N.K. Bose has stated about the Indian culture, quote unquote, unity in diversity. Unity in diversity. So the second one I have already asked, ethnocentrism definitely gives the thought to the xenophobia and culture shock, because right now what is going on under the COVID, everyone is looking suspiciously at others. Everyone is looking suspiciously at others, whether it is a person who is suffered from COVID or not. There is a famous book by Irving Goffman related to the pandemics. He has stated that disease make the own family member or the friend into an enemy. The need of the hour is to go through the cultural relativistic approach and turn the xenophobia into, according to the word of the famous social anthropologist Professor Vinay Kumar Srivastava, xenophilia. The concept of xenophilia. The conversion of xenophobia, only culture can do that, to turn into xenophilia, the belief, the belongingness, togetherness with the others. That's what I will say here.
Thank you, sir. Next question is Sanskritization similar to parochialization?
No, exactly. Sanskritization is not similar to parochialization. No, Sanskritization means, say, it was basically studied by M.N. Srinivas in his study among the religion and society among the Kurds of South India. The Kurd, they were a tribal group. What the Kurd tried to do, the Kurd tried to uplift their social hierarchy, and from tribal status, they tried to get merged with the caste society. And in doing that process, what they did, they followed the cultural practices of the caste Hindu people. The pollution and purity concept. They started to wear the dress, the Kurd people started to wear the dress according to the caste Hindu Brahmins. They started to follow the food habit of them, so that they can purify themselves for their so-called polluted concept of alcoholism, of consuming of the animal fleshes and meats. That is the process of Sanskritization as coined by Srinivas. But parochialization means when the cultural practices of the great tradition, the Hinduized society, are coming to the oral societies or the tribal societies. Say, for example, in Hindu marriage system, we used to have the Satvire concept around the fire. The moving for the 7 times around the fire. That is the concept of the Hindu marriage, one of the core ritual of the Hindu marriage system. That's what we can see right now in certain tribal societies also. Why? Because as I had discussed the process of folk-urban continuum, similarly in India, another study was done by Professor Surajit Sinha, tribe, caste and peasant continuum. Tribal society and caste society in multi-ethnic villages, they are situated side by side. They are following each other's rituals. They are cultural acculturation process is going on, sharing each other's cultural traits. In that similar way, this practice is also going on in between them, that they are following the tribal people, they are following the rituals of caste Hindu peoples also, that is the use of the fire. So that is the concept of parochialization. Sanskritization is the tribal people, they are following the.
I think there is some technical issue from the side of, you can have a look at, you can interact with Dr. Somenath and ask for more books if you're interested. Next, Dr. Somnath, the question is, how dominant culture tries to negotiate with local culture? Somewhere the practices of local are accommodated, somewhere it is negated. If you can kindly comment on it.
Actually, that's what is the process of globalization, what I had told. That what happens in the consumer behavior right now, say for example, different indigenous designs and motives, we can see on the dress patterns for us, on the shirts, on the salwar suits, etc. Particularly if you go to the Madhubani design and the Savara paintings, Madhubani paintings, there are the shirts also, there are on the saris also. But do we believe that shirt is a typical dress of the Shavara tribal group who are famous for the Madhubani painting? Is it their traditional dress? No. Shirt is a global Western dress. It's a global Western dress pattern. It's a global Western dress pattern. So what is occurring here is that the global culture is giving a space, or global culture is getting tied up. Global culture is getting a space, or global culture is getting tied up with the local culture through the process of globalization. The global culture is getting tied up or getting assimilated with the process of the local culture through the globalization process. Globalization to globalization means a global local phenomenon. And in certain cases, there are obviously, particularly if you see the folk cultural things, then obviously the folk cultural practices are now getting really, in some areas, it is getting on the way of abolishment, because those practices, the next generations are not more interested to the folk cultures. They are no more interested to the folk cultures, and they are getting even a number of tribal festivals, in Northeast India. The Hornbill Festival of the Nagas, the Karbi Youth Festival in Karbi Anglong. A number of global cultural practices can be noticed. It has changed remarkably. Since it was incepted. So somewhere it is getting adjusted, somewhere it is getting more over influenced. Both of the issues are there. Because we have to accept, neither we can ultimately prevent the globalization, nor we can prevent the process of acculturation. Both will come up. To some extent, we can assimilate. To an extent, we can amalgamate them. But that depends upon the interest of the young generation of the little traditions also, the young generation society of the little traditions also, how they will keep their world view, territorial, beyond territorial, or global, or keeping global with the local. That's what I will say here in a nutshell.
Thank you, Dr. Somenath. We take the last question of the day. The question is, how food can be associated with the problems of gender in respect to cultural studies?
Can you please repeat the question?
How food can be associated with the problematics of gender in respect to cultural studies?
Actually, if we think about the food and gender directly as a problematic thing, it is not like that, but food has played a certain role related to the reproductive mother-child health issues, because we have certain food taboos. Related to the reproductive mother in different tribal societies. They avoid certain kind of food during their pregnancy period or just after the childbirth. That's what we say as a postpartum period, because they have a belief that these sort of food practices may cause some problem related to their indigestion or problem related to their health related matters, which will ultimately affect the womb in the body. So that's why they restrict their ethnogynecologist. It is their indigenous medicinal practice that to avoid a certain type of food or certain kind of food in that aspect. Now, if we think about the food as exclusively as a social problem or a cultural problem related to gender, I think that it cannot be simplified in such an easy way. It cannot be simplified. Food can't be taken into consideration that it is it is imposing a gender taboo or a gender restriction like that. But it has a medicinal value, an indigenous medicinal value, if the reproductive mother-child health is being concerned at the point of time. That is the main thing here. Their prescription by their ethno-gynecologist to secure the pregnancy, to secure the childbirth, and to secure the health of the mother and child both after the birth of the child. That is one of the important issues.
Thank you, Dr. Somnath, for such interesting deliberations. And,
thank you very much.
Before we conclude the session, I would request Dr. Hariom to please give his vote of thanks.
Oh.
Is my voice audible?
Yes,
yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Is my voice audible?
Yes, I can hear you.
Actually, I am experiencing some technical glitches, but fortunately, towards the end of the session, I am back. Thank you, Dr. Somnath, for delivering such a beautiful, scholarly, and insightful lecture. I must say one thing about your lecture, that for most of us, for those who belong to the field of English,
I think he is experiencing, yes, he is experiencing a lot of turbulence.
Right.
He is experiencing a lot of turbulence.
Yes. Network glitches are going on.
So I think he is experiencing some rain also.
Yes, yeah, that may be the phenomenon.
So taking over from Dr. Hariom, let me do the honor of concluding the session. So Dr. Somnath, it was an absolute pleasure and honor to have you, and the deliberation, the well-researched presentation that you have given today. I'm sure the participants will be very highly benefited. And as Dr. Hariom said, it was a very, very highly scholastic presentation in a very lucid manner. So on behalf of Team DAATH VOYAGE, I thank you. I extend my heartfelt gratitude and thanks to you for accepting our invitation and for delivering this wonderful lecture. And we hope to keep in touch, and definitely we hope to have such kind of fruitful and enriching deliberations in the near future also from your side. So on behalf of Team DAATH VOYAGE, this is Dr. Somenath Bhattacharjee signing off. Namaskar. Good night. Take care.
Thank you.
Good night, participants.
Thank you.
Good night, participants.
Thank you.
We join tomorrow at 5:31 seconds. Thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah. Namaskar.